We had a guest so nice that we're bringing him back to speak to him twice. Ryan Roberts is here, and we are about to break it down. So please grab a pen, grab some paper. It's time to take notes because the nuggets of wisdom will be too much to keep in here. We got to take some notes down. It is time to prepare 7 days away from the NFL draft. It is time to prepare. Get ready right here, right now. Boy Green meets Wudi.
Zoinks! It is unequivocally the Super Bowl for New York Jet fans.
Field Yates, baby. Field Gosh Darn Yates. Let's bring him on the show.
Come on, people. Connor Rogers is joining the show. What's up, Connor? But Trevor Gosh Darn Sycamore, baby, for me, personally, my favorite New York Jet of all time.
Wow, it's great to be on. What an intro that was right there.
Paul, nobody does an intro like you, man.
Paul, you give the best intro of literally any podcast that I've ever been on.
I'm gonna lose my gosh darn bananas.
Welcome, everybody. It is Boy Green meets Wudi. I am your boy, James Wudi. Couldn't be more excited. Like I said, 7 days away. Holy 7 days. I'm starting to get sleepless nights. Whoo, it's a draft season, baby. How are you doing, my man, with the plan, Boy Green?
You know how I'm doing, baby. We got the draft a week away, baby. I'm fired up and I'm excited. And again, this wasn't originally on the schedule that we had this guest. I said, this day or this day. Joined us on Tuesday. Was so great. So many comments. Overwhelming that we had to do a discount double check and bring him back. That is Ryan Roberts, double R. R twice. Guest twice. Joining us here on the program, Rise and Draft, like shake and bake, just like he said. You can follow him on Twitter at that very handle. One of the best in the business. Let's welcome him in. Ryan, welcome back, brother.
I appreciate you guys again. I think you're setting me up for failure a little bit, Wudi. That was a better intro than you did last time. Okay, and now you guys are telling me that he's so good. He's coming back second time, and now people are going to be let down very big time. But thank you guys for having me. I always appreciate it.
No letdown. I promise you. I absolutely promise you. The DMs I got, I told you, you made it to my Instagram story, and people were like, "Oh my god, like what?" It's not every day that my inbox blows up. But Ryan, you were out here blowing up my inbox.
I appreciate you guys, man. This, like I said, this is the fun time of the year. Like the last week is literally I'm posting something about top 30 visits, right? Where it's just like, this is all I'm dealing with right now is just who's visiting where and who cares and smoke screen season. And this team likes this guy. This team doesn't like this guy. It's a wonderful time of the year, man. No more work. Just sit back and relax.
So we get multiple days of the NFL draft and multiple days of Ryan Roberts. I mean, how in the hell were we this lucky? So
Wednesday 3 of the draft, man. You got to bring me back. Maybe a little PFA season. I mean, you got to figure it out. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So
no. The Jets will be in those waters. They do have the last two picks of the 2024 NFL draft, so they will be swimming in those waters, trying to pluck a few ripe fruit off the tree. There's no question about it. And on Tuesday, we talked about the most intriguing prospects that the Jets are meeting with. And again, a major shout out to my boy, Dom C., who put this list together of who the Jets have met with: pro days, combine, senior bowls, private visits, things of that nature, which we gathered from that list to create our own list from those lists of players that we want to learn more about. And this headline is mysterious players. Now, this may be mysterious to the general sense. It may not just be like, what about this cornerback from Technical Institute of this and that? It may not be exactly that, but for the greater fans, I know they kind of get a collection plate of first-round picks, so they're kind of like, we got a knowledge, and then it kind of goes off the hill for a lot of the casual fans. So we're hoping to give them a little bit more intel. Again, all of these players I'm going to mention and Woody's going to mention are players the Jets have met with at least once, if not multiple times. We'll try to keep you guys posted on all of these different guys. And I'm just going to start hot just because I want to make sure Wudi doesn't take my guy, because this may be one of the coolest stories in terms of, well, again, I'll let Ryan Roberts spill the deets on this guy, but Quantez Stiggers, the cornerback the cornerback who's from the CFL, and he's done a lot of things. I heard Adam Schefter talking about him. Mel Kiper took time out early in the offseason to talk about him on his first draft podcast. I've heard a lot of crazy stories. The Jets have been investigating him. Give us the full story here, Ryan Roberts, on Quantez Stiggers, because he's been getting some palpable buzz among the real inside NFL draft fans, but the casual fans may have missed this guy.
Yeah. So obviously you're talking about the CFL Rookie of the Year this past year. 5 interceptions, I believe he did as a rookie, and never went to college. So there was, I believe it was the COVID year, and so they weren't playing football. And so he made a decision, his family made a decision to go into the fan-controlled football league, was kind of the move that they made. So they went to fan-controlled, which for people that never saw fan-controlled, it was indoor football where literally the fans had the power to pick plays and such, right? So like it was a little bit more of an interactive type of feel. And then he went to the CFL and this past year and again was Rookie of the Year. And then he went down to the East-West Shrine Bowl this past year, which I believe was in Frisco, Texas. I believe they moved it there from Las Vegas the year prior. And he's been kind of the talk, man, because then he had his pro day. I think he ran like 4.45. He had some pretty good numbers overall. I mean, he's a pretty bigger corner. He's right around 6 foot, 200 pounds. He's got a lot of athletic traits to look for. I will say this, the only tape I've seen of Quantez Stiggers, though, is the East-West Shrine Bowl availability because can't really find too much CFL all 22 out there in the universe too much, right? But
yeah,
very interesting player. He's only 22 years old still, so it's not like he's, a journeyman that, just had to figure it out type of thing. And it's a really interesting backstory because technically a professional football player, but obviously he never went through the NFL draft process, obviously going from fan controlled to CFL. So very intriguing football player who has gotten a lot of buzz, especially after he had a really nice week at the East-West Shrine Bowl.
Again, the Jets have met with him 3 times this offseason, a top 30 visit, a private visit, plus virtual. So you kind of mentioned some of the virtual fan play of fans calling in the place, da bomb from NFL Blitz, trying to get that play in there. But virtual, they're also allowed Zoom meetings. That's a new part of the process here for NFL teams, which is very nice. So a very intriguing player. Go ahead, Wudi.
Yeah, I'll keep it with the same position. A player that the Jets brought in for a top 30 visit, and had a virtual meeting with is Micah Abraham. Not necessarily the same size, right? We're talking about Stiggers, nice 6 foot frame, but 5'9" kind of reminds me. I mean, right just height wise, DJ Reed is 5'9". Tell us a little bit more, Ryan, about Micah and what he could bring to an NFL team.
Yeah, so he was a part of a really good cornerback duo a couple years ago, or I guess in 2022 was the final year they were together, but he had Stephon Gilmore's younger brother that was there, Stephen Gilmore, which is pretty hilarious, right? So it was Stephen Gilmore, Micah Abraham at Marshall, and I mean, they were great. I literally saw them in person in 2022. Unfortunately, I do cover Notre Dame football, and I was at the Notre Dame Marshall game where Marshall upset Notre Dame in South Bend, which wasn't the best game if you're covering Notre Dame football, but Micah, I mean, he is one of those guys that might not be the biggest dude of all time, but he's really feisty, man. I think that he's going to be a really good nickel on the next level because, I mean, in that game against Notre Dame specifically, he was just squatting against everything, man. And he has great trust, I think, in his athleticism, but he will get hands on you. He will tackle. He's pretty physical, and he's got tremendous ball skills. He really does. So he's kind of a short zone type of corner, like a cover 2 heavy system, or if you're going to do some off man stuff where he's able to trigger back to the line of scrimmage, that's Mike Abraham's style. So if you want some fun, again, 2022, Stephen Gilmore on one side, Mike Abraham on the other for Marshall, the Thundering Herd. And again, he's a lot bigger, or plays a lot bigger than what his size would dictate, but he's got really good ball skills and a tremendous instinctual football player as well.
Wow. So what round do you think he would be available?
He might be a PFA guy. I mean, it's not a foregone conclusion that he's going to get drafted. The one thing that a guy like Mike Abraham does have in his favor is that it's not the deepest class of all time. Actually, I don't even say it's not the deepest class because that makes it sound a little bit too nice. It's a pretty poor draft on day 3. Like, it really thins out very quickly, right? So could he be a 6th, 7th round pick, a little bit of a late round flyer who's played a ton of football, it's possible. But if you're looking for like a realistic range, I would say he's 7th to PFA. Like he's somewhere in that ballpark. But as a guy that has played a whole lot on the outside and projects favorably inside to nickel potential on the next level, that type of versatility is definitely worth bringing into a camp and seeing how he competes. So I like Mike Abraham. He's going to be a late round guy though, but there are some make it traits that I think to stick potentially on a roster.
All right. And before we get into the player I want to bring up, I just want to ask a greater point here. Is it in your estimation that it's Brock Bowers and everybody else at the tight end position, or is there not as significant or crazy a gap as that appears to be?
It's a very weird year of tight end because you have one elite football player and then you have a couple guys that you would love to develop, but then the class kind of stinks, like overall, right?
Okay.
Like it's not a great class. It's really not. I love Brock. He is tight end 1 by a landslide. You know how we also about tiers, right? Like tier 1, tier 2. It's Brock Bowers tier 1, and then the next tight end is probably in tier 3. Like it is a clear tier break in talent, in my opinion. Like I like Jatavion Sanders out of Texas. I think somewhere mid day 2 type of player, like late second round ish. I'd be very okay with him. I like Jared Wiley out of TCU as a developmental guy in the mid rounds. There's guys that have higher floors, like a Ben Sinnott out of Kansas State, like a Cade Stover out of Ohio State. Theo Johnson out of Penn State has his fans as well. But I really do think that this is one great tight end and a bunch of developmental players and a couple high floor kids. Like it's just not a great tight end class this year.
Well, one of the names you mentioned is the one I really want to get into. The Jets met with him. I feel like LeBron James here. Not once, not twice, not 3 times, 4 times they've met with this individual. This is a private workout, a pro day, Senior Bowl meeting, and a private meeting at the NFL Combine. In addition to that, that is Theo Johnson, the tight end out of Penn State. But I've kind of had your same mindset. That's Brock Bowers. And if they don't take him, which is possible, of course, the Jets could go a lot of different directions, but if they don't take him, I'm like, all right, I'm good just not taking a tight end. Let's just roll with what we have. But Can you change my mind here? With Theo Johnson, someone obviously they're very interested in.
Well, I mean, if you don't get Brock Bowers, then he might be the best bet to being a high volume pass catcher on the next level, like long term. I would say that because Theo has all the talent in the world. I mean, my guy is above 6'6". He is 255 pounds. He ran 4.61, I think 4.62, somewhere in that ballpark, but that was slow for him. Like he had literally set the Penn State off-season record in 40-yard dash time. He beat Mike Gesicki's record. He ran 4.51 in an off-season electronically timed. And there was actually expectation that some people thought he might crack a high 4.4. Like he's a legit athlete. And then you just look at the rest of the numbers. I mean, the kid's springy, he's explosive, he changes direction well. The thing about him though is that durability to a degree. He's missed some games in his career. And honestly, like he just never got a whole lot better. He's just kind of been the same guy for 3 years. I mean, he got incrementally better, but it wasn't like substantial, right? Like you were expecting him to become the next great Penn State tight end because they have actually had a decent run of developing tight ends. I mean, you talk about Pat Freiermuth and, I just mentioned Mike Gesicki as far as like just a pass catching threat, but Theo never really turned into that guy. I mean, he had a good last year, 300 something yards, 7 touchdowns, but he should have been better, to be honest. Like his talent is much higher than what his production is right now. Now, that being said, he still has a lot of make it traits and then high upside, right? Like he's more than a willing blocker. He's got building blocks to be a good blocker. But the thing that gets you excited is that he has some untapped potential athletically, man. He is long, he's explosive, he's a seam runner. Like he can do a lot of things for you, but I don't know if the year 1 turnaround is going to be great. This is more like a kid that you get in, give him a specialized role, let him play some special teams year 1, and then year 2, hopefully he's a starter. Year 3, hopefully he's a plus starter. Like that's the trajectory of Theo. He hasn't quite gotten there yet, but former Canadian, Penn State guy. I mean, a lot of cool layers to his story, and he's a great athlete. So hopefully he's able to make that ascension, but unfortunately he just never really did what we wanted him to do for the Nittany Lions.
Interesting. Yeah, because the Jets have Jeremy Ruckert on their team, and the interesting thing with him coming out was the Jets said, ooh, there's untapped pass-catching potential. They didn't ask him of that of Ohio State. The offense was so talented, but here we could give him that chance. He was the 101st overall pick. But a guy, again, we've just kind of seen the same thing. Flashes at the NFL, Nothing consistent yet, but we'll see. But yeah, Theo Johnson, certainly meeting a guy with a prospect that amount of time certainly raised a flag for me. Like, okay, what do they see in this guy? So very interesting. Yeah, Wudi, go ahead.
Well, you want to talk about meeting somebody 4 times? Then let's talk about meeting somebody 4 times. I did a mock draft with Boy Green a couple of weeks ago, and I was laughed at. I was mocked during the mock draft by our commenters for drafting a linebacker. I want to say in the 3rd round. I drafted.
Oh yes, it was. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was not a good time to be me that day. Now the person that I drafted was Jeremiah Trotter Jr. That he has not met with the Jets, to our knowledge. Okay. But
so you're not asking me about Jeremiah Trotter Jr.
No,
Thank you so much. I do not want to put that out in the universe. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Anytime. No, we are talking about Nathaniel Watson. Okay, this is somebody who did have the top 30 private workout, pro day, meeting at the Senior Bowl. And he actually tested pretty well at the combine. What do you see there?
I mean, he tested a lot better than I thought he was going to be honest. At Mississippi State, it was super fun though, man. They had Nathaniel Watson, they had this other white inside linebacker named Jet Johnson, who was like, you knew he wasn't an NFL player, right? But like, he's just a really fun inside linebacker on the college level. And I hate the word fun in NFL draft space because that usually means that you're not saying he's good or bad, right? It's just kind of like a middle ground of like, wow, that guy's really fun to watch. It's like, all right, more analysis, please. Like, can we start talking about this guy? But Watson is your throwback linebacker. He is well-built, physical, downhill, explosive on contact, pretty good actually very good eye discipline compared to this class, especially. I mean, because there's a lot of linebackers in this class this year that great athletes, right? Like high upside, but their eyes stink. Like they just put their eyes in wrong spots and they're in wrong gaps. And it's just like, where are you going, dog? Like, I don't know what you're doing right now. Watson is the complete opposite. He is physical to flow, great eyes, instinctual. I do, though, and I'm Mississippi State, asking him to change direction, asking him to cover in the pass, wasn't the best in the world, right? Like, this is kind of like an early down run stopper. He reminds me a little bit of Christian Jones that came out of Florida State a while ago, and, like, Christian Jones was never, like, a starter for, like, a long-term outlook of a team, right? You weren't like, oh, yeah, Christian Jones for the next 5 years, let's do it. But, like, Christian Jones, when he needed to, was good, right? Like a good solid player, a really good reserve. And I think that's what Nathaniel Watson is. Like, he's going to be a really good reserve linebacker. Is he ever going to be a full-time starter on your team? I don't think so, or at least not on a good defense, and obviously the Jets have a very good defense. So, and I know they actually don't need linebackers, which is probably why you were ridiculed a little bit on the mock draft, I guess. But I like Watson though. A day 3 player, probably mid-day 3, probably somewhere 5th round-ish range. But a guy that, again, he's going to play special teams because he's pretty good in a straight line. I don't think he's ever going to be an asset on passing downs, but as an early down run stopper and a guy that can play special teams, Watson certainly has a chance to stick for a while in the NFL.
Yeah, this is a player, I'm going to be honest, I'm about to mention. I don't know if you know. Hopefully you do, because I am curious about this mammoth of a man that could have starred in Game of Thrones potentially. Okay. And this big bastard's name is Giovanni Manu.
The international kid, right?
He's from the University of British Columbia. He stands in at 6'8", 350 pounds. And when you see that size, and I've seen that the Jets have met with him both for a top 30 and private, I also believe, I don't think it's on the roster sheet, but I'm pretty sure they're at his mini pro day too. He's just a big guy, and the Jets need offensive linemen all the time. But I'm going to be honest, the little peasant research I've been doing to try to learn more about him, there doesn't seem to be a lot out there. I've looked at his school profile. I've tried to talk to people that would know something about the University of British Columbia, and I've gotten like nothing, nada. So I just know he's a big bastard, and people have given the kind of like soft analysis on social media, like, well, he's big and intriguing. I'm like, okay, what else can you tell me?
I mean, he had a nice vertical leap at his pro day and everything, right?
Yeah.
So he's a good athlete. I can't tell you too much, to be honest. I know there's two of them this year, right? I can't remember.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. I was actually trying to search the kid's name because we actually had the other international offensive tackle that has some draft buzz down at the College Gridiron Showcase, which I scout for this year, but I can't remember the kid's name, but he's another kid that's probably going to go priority free agent. I can't tell you a lot other than I saw the same video everyone saw of him jumping and him being absolutely massive and being like, how is that kid 340 plus pounds? Because it looks like he has no bad weight on his frame, and being like, holy smokes, like who the heck is that kid? So that's as much I'd give you, man. British Columbia film, as I said before on the CFL film, not the most easy to get, as you can imagine.
Yeah, very much not the case there. He is, according to all the, I've tried to reach out to like agents and people around him. He projects to be at this point a late day 3 priority free agent kind of pick, but it makes sense because I was hearing Bill Belichick actually with Pat McAfee the other day. He was explaining kind of the purpose of top 30 visits and why just because a team doesn't meet with someone in the top 30 doesn't necessarily mean anything good, bad, or indifferent. They just know what they need to know, and they don't want to waste one of those slots. So I heard him kind of talking about the purpose of him, like, oh, that totally makes sense why the Jets would bring him in, just to find out who the hell is this kid and what is he, if they can find their own in a much different way, their own Michael Orr blindside story of people that didn't know him. And that's back from the high school to college ranks, not necessarily college or pros because he was a first round pick, but that same sort of like, let's information gather this offseason. So no, I will be very curious on this guy too. And a lot of people are as well. Yeah, go ahead, Wudi.
Absolutely. I am going to return back to the defensive side of the ball. You know, people clowning me for my attention to the defense, but hey, you know, things aren't forever. You know, you got to keep drafting for the future. You know, guys come and go, and that second defensive tackle position next to Quinnen Williams. You know, it's cool. You know, they added, you know, Javon Kinlaw. They added some guys. But
Likey Fotu, Solomon Thomas, yeah, but they're all 1-year deal guys. They don't have a long-term guy there.
I love Lucky Fotu coming out of Utah, man. I was a big Lucky Fotu guy. Yeah. It seems like
tell us about him. Give us a little on Likey. Yeah.
So I think I had a 3rd round grade on him, and I think he ended up going in like the 4th or 5th. I can't remember, somewhere in that ballpark. He's a massive kid, man. Like he's just imposing, long. He was really explosive in a straight line. Like he's more of a linear athlete. He's not incredibly flexible, but if he could play with consistent pad level, which is the thing coming out of Utah that wasn't there all the time, was that he played a little bit too high. He's got power profile, man. He's long as heck, and he's a pretty good moving athlete in a straight line. It's just, you're not going to ask him to twist a ton or try to win an upfield shoulder. Like that's not going to be his thing. But as a linear athlete, as a 0-1, he's got something to him, I think. Lucky Fotu does.
Yeah, and I heard about his rugby background too. They were talking about that in the Jets facilities the other day. So wow, yeah, he's intriguing. But yeah, Wudi, a long-term piece potentially is what the Jets are missing there next to Quinnen. Who do you got?
Yeah, well, they according to Lance Zierlein, Mason Smith is supposed to be a round 3 type guy. I don't know if he's dropping, but what would you say about him?
Mason with 2 A's. Great way to spell Mason, by the way. It's funny, dude. I was actually just talking to one of my scouting buddies that I talked to a lot about the NFL draft space about Mason Smith earlier, because I was watching Jordan Jefferson, they have 3 defensive tackles in this class this year. They have Mekhi Wingo, they have Jordan Jefferson, and they have Mason Smith. Mason was the former 5-star. He's the acclaimed guy, right? Like he's the one that everyone knew about going to Baton Rouge and being a 5-star. So he was supposed to be a breakout in 2022, but then he got hurt in like the first drive of the first game in 2022 and missed the entirety of that season. 2023 was kind of his comeback. Look, if you want a defensive tackle that looks the parts, it's Mason Smith. I mean, he's 6'5 plus, he's 300 plus pounds with easy weights. He's got 34-inch arms. Like he's an imposing presence. There's no doubt. The problem with Mason Smith is that you line up his 10 best plays of a game, you think he's a first rounder, like just flat out. You're like, that's incredible movement for a guy that size, very strong. But then you watch the whole game tape and you're just like, he takes so many plays off and he just doesn't look like he plays hard all the time. And it doesn't look like he's fully motivated all the time. And, you know, without throwing the kid under the bus, I do have some good connects down in LSU, and some people don't speak that highly of his work ethic and that type of stuff. Right. So It's all about untapped potential, though, because this kid's, 20, 21 years old? I mean, he was a true junior that came out. So there's obviously upside there. There's obviously time for a Mason Smith to round out and to become that type of dude, but you are taking a little bit of a gamble on him. You are. Now, ultimately, I'd still draft him in the top 100. I would, because you don't make guys that look like that every day. Like there's just not a lot that look like that. He looks like Chris Jones. I mean, just physically, like he looks like that type of guy. And he has that type of upside as well. Now, LSU played him a lot as a nose in their system, but he can move out all the way to a 3-4, 4-eye if you're playing some odd man front. Like he can do a lot of different things. If you can motivate him, you have a good defensive line coach, you have a good defensive coordinator. Mason Smith could end up being one of the best values in this class, or he could be a guy that never figures it out. I mean, there's just not, this is a bit, we always talk about boomer bust players. It's Mason Smith. He's a boomer bust player. The boom could be tremendous, but the lack of consistency really does worry you.
All right, you just heard it here first. Ryan Roberts said Mason Smith is Chris Jones, baby. Lock it in. Phenomenal. That's exactly it. Jets can get Chris Jones. Okay, nice. Thank you, Ryan.
Funny enough is that Chris Jones kind of had some of the same concerns coming out of Mississippi State, man. It was like the consistency and just wanting to be great all the times were like things that were questioned of Chris Jones. And if you look at his numbers when he came out of Mississippi State, sorry, I just started thinking about his wardrobe malfunction when he tripped over the line. That's a conversation for another day. But when you remember Chris Jones at Mississippi State, it was all flash and it was not substance, though. Like his production was not great at Mississippi State. He was a guy that you had to bet on the NFL level. And luckily for Kansas City, they bet on him. And he ends up being one of the best defensive linemen that we've seen in this generation, right? So that's the type of gamble that you have to make with the Mason Smith. Maybe it turns out great, but it is a gamble regardless.
Well, the Jets did meet with Mason. They had a top 30 and they were at his pro day. So, hopefully they were able to see a little bit into that work ethic and see if he's somebody that would fit their locker room.
God, you guys, I just got to say, you guys are funny. Hopefully they could see a little more. And then Ryan gets in, he flashed. Yeah, he did. Yeah, in Indianapolis.
They saw everything of Chris Jones coming out, man. They saw absolutely everything about him. So, yeah.
He put it all out there. There's no question about it. He laid it all on the line.
He took body typing to a whole new word, man. Yes.
That is it. So, yeah, if we could get a little bit of that, a little bit of the player, want to make sure that that'd be wonderful for the New York Jets. I'll stay here on defense. This has been, so, of course, we're here, like Wudi said, a week out from the NFL draft, and we've consumed a lot of mock drafts over the last bunch of months, and I will say, with regularity outside of the first round, okay, 10th overall, sure. There's a lot of players that are commonly mocked there to the Jets that we talk about. But the most common player to me that's been mocked to the Jets outside of the first round is Jaden Hicks, the safety out of Washington State. I've seen it from some of the biggest guys in our business, from The Athletic, doing these 7-round long mock drafts. It's a common thing, and I hear when they talk about the traits and the things, it seems like a natural fit with some of the traits and things that the Jets are looking for on defense. But it has been interesting to see different guys from ESPN, The Athletic, NFL.com, all these wild different places, but they keep coming to similar conclusions, which is fascinating to me. Jaden Hicks, what can you tell us about that kid?
When someone asks you about a player that you don't love and then you just feel like you have to urge yourself to say something positive, well, that is not the case about Jaden Hicks, because I love everything about Jaden Hicks, man. He was literally, we just did our safety breakdown. He's my number 2 safety in the class. I have a day 2 grade on him. I'm obsessed with his game. I really am. First and foremost, third-year player coming out, was only a redshirt sophomore this last year, so young. But this young man is, if you watch his Washington State film, and I forget which game I was watching this past year, but it was one of the most outrageous games that I've seen of a prospect this year. He is just, what Jamal Adams was when he was at his best, right? Mm-hmm. That's Jaden Hicks. Short zone, physical, downhill, can play in the slot at times, but he's a short zone, he makes his presence felt, man. He's a tone setter on a defense. One of the more punishing hitters in this class. He has a really good knack for understanding what's developing in front of him. Now, that being said, he's not a true free safety on the NFL level, because he's not a guy that's going to rotate to the middle of the field, play deep zone all the time, or at least make an impact in deep zone. far as range, but range downhill, range working inside out in the run game. Love Jaden Hicks. Absolutely. I think he's a plus starter in the NFL long term. I think that if you're a cover 3 heavy system, him as a strong safety is fantastic. I think if you're a cover 2, cover 4, he can do enough from the roof to be able to be that type of guy as far as range, but downhill, physicality, around the box, in the slot, inside and out. Kid's great, man. I love Jaden Hicks. He's one of my favorite players in this class.
Phenomenal. Go ahead, Wudi. Go ahead.
Wow. Back to offense now, right? Everybody wants to talk about offense. Back to offense. I feel like this is a name where, because of the strength of the position in this class, he's not really talked about. So when we talk about mysteries, I think he is a mystery to the Jets fans because they're all worried about Odunze, right? They're worried about Neighbors. Ricky Pearsall is somebody that they keep talking about. But I don't know if I've heard this name one time, but the Jets have heard it at least 3 times because they've done the private workout, they've done the top 30 visit, they've met with him at the Senior Bowl. Troy Franklin, the wide receiver. Lance Zierlein is trying to tell me that his comp is Chris Olave. That's the face I made. That's the face I made. How do you feel?
Man, Troy Franklin. I have very mixed feelings on Troy Franklin. Things I love. He is incredibly sleek, really smooth, and he's fast, right? Like, and those things translate. He can win vertically a ton down the field. The things I dislike, very thin framed, no play strength, and he's a little bit tight, man. Like, he's not a great route runner, which is why my face was like that with the Chris Olave comment, because Chris Olave is one of the best route runners we've seen come out in the last couple years. I mean, like, he was a tremendous route runner coming out of Ohio State. I don't necessarily see that as Troy Franklin's strength. Troy Franklin to me is a Z receiver that can press vertically. That's a situational player on the next level, which nothing wrong with that. And if I get that player as a secondary pass catcher on day 2 somewhere, like second or third round with a good wide receiver core, I'd be cool with that. But there's some people that I think are kind of pushing him up a little bit too far. There's just that play strength bothers me a little bit, man. It really does. Because I'm not really worried about the frame as much because he's only 170 something pounds. And I know, like, someone said to me before, well, Devonta Smith has like the same frame as Troy Franklin. I'm like, yeah, but Devonta Smith's play strength coming out of Alabama was silly. Like, it didn't make any sense. You're like, how is that kid beating press at 170 pounds? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Or 169 pounds, whatever the heck he was coming out. Troy Franklin's not the same guy. You need to get him off the line of scrimmage a little bit, maximize releases. Don't let him get on the line of scrimmage and just get mugged at the line. Like, that's not his game. But if you can maximize release points and let him get a free release and let him work vertically, he's got some speed to burn, man. He really does. I think there's some Robbie Anderson there, right? Like, I could see him being a Robbie type of dude. But the thing about Robbie is that Robbie was pretty flexible, though. Like, Robbie could run routes, like he wasn't just a vertically oriented player, but that was probably the best part of his game, at least during his Jets career, right? So I think that there's some Robbie there, but I just think that you need to understand that if you're drafting Troy Franklin second or third round, you're not asking him to be an all-around receiver. You're asking him to be, and in the Jets' case, this Wilson and you have Mike Williams, you're asking him to be a departmentalized pass catcher. Utilize his vertical speed, utilize his smoothness down the field. He can do those types of things. I just don't necessarily see an all-around pass catcher right now.
Wait a second, real quick. So who were you talking about? Jets receiver? Do you mean Robbie Chosen Anderson, Sun God? What name is he going by these days?
I only remember the Robbie Anderson that went to Temple, okay? So that's the Robbie Anderson that I know and love, all right?
That's good for clarity's sake. That's good for clarity's sake. But yeah, Troy Franklin has been an interesting guy who, in the same realm, I thought he was in a certain pocket, but I've seen a couple of late first round like mocks. I'm like, whoa, hey, sneak it up there. Whoa, hey now.
It's too much in this class. I mean, we're in the midst of last 4 out of the last 5 years pretty much have been kind of historical wide receiver classes. Like, they've been just absolutely riddled with talent, right? And this one's the same. Like, there is so much talent at wide receiver. I don't see him as a first rounder in any year, especially in this year where there's just so much depth. I mean, we're in the again, the class tails off on day 3, right? But we're talking about a class that is really deep at wide receiver, It's really deep at offensive tackle. It's really deep at corner. I mean, like there's legitimately some really good classes this year, especially at the top. So no, I don't think he's a first round player for me. Will he go there? I've heard some buzz. Like I think he's going to go top 50 if nothing else. Right. So we'll have to see where it ends up being. But first is definitely way too rich for me for a guy that I just kind of consider a niche player on the next level, not a guy that can be an all around receiver.
Yeah, fair enough. Again, shout out to the 400 plus people that are watching the show live right now. Or if you happen to be watching after the fact, make sure you guys like the video, hit subscribe down below, and show your support. Also, speaking of showing your support, Ryan Roberts, the College Wire for the USA Today Network. Make sure you guys are checking out his draft coverage again. Rise in Draft, like Shake and Bake on Twitter. Make sure you guys hit that follow button. Ryan, it was awesome having you on Tuesday. It's even more awesome to have you on Thursday. It's been a long time since me and you have gotten to chat and do an interview, and we've never gotten to order this kind of meal and sprinkle a little Wudi on top of this pie. So this has been phenomenal, spectacular, and I'm looking forward to doing this more regularly with you, pal.
Absolutely, guys. Thank you so much for having me. It's very appreciated. Thank you, guys.
All right, beautiful. All right, Wudi, we're going to have to see you next Tuesday because we're going to have a draft week next week. Should be awesome, and can't wait. Any final words?
It will be absolutely exciting. Are you serious? Come on. This is the countdown. The countdown is on. All right. And Ryan, oh my Lord, did he teach us a lot this whole week? I feel like I'm ready. If Joe Douglas called me and said, hey, Wudi, what's your opinion? I feel like now I got some things to say, all because of Ryan. So I appreciate you. And for everybody, the 400 plus, I appreciate you guys as well. It's the final countdown to this NFL draft. Your boy's hype.
I appreciate the shout out to Europe. All right, let's get, speaking of musical chimes. Signing off, baby. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you again for Boy Green Meets Wudi next Tuesday. Again, we'll see you tomorrow morning with my father joining the show. He has some things to talk about with apparently my history with alcohol. Not looking forward to that. That tomorrow morning, Boy Green Daily at 7:30 in the morning. Yeah, there's a tease. See you guys then. Take care. God bless.